Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Marc Medley Show. If you don't know who this is your host, Marc Medley. Thank you for the love. I thank you for the love. Well, as I said, this is your host, Marc Medley, and this is another episode of the Marc Medley Show. Needless to say, I could not let the events at the Oscars go past without giving some form of commentary or my opinion, my thoughts, whatever you want to call them. And I'm really not here to judge Will Smith per se. However, as the principal of a school and constantly working with students and constantly sharing with them that there is a way to do business, there is a way to handle things, there's a way to solve conflicts or disagreements, there's no way in the world that I could not say something about what happened there at the Oscars. Because first off, violence is not the way. Violence only begets more violence. And thank God Chris Rock had the restraint or had the wherewithal to not respond like he might have responded had they been in the street or had Will hit someone on the street. So the fact that he was able to get that off only was because they were on live TV or on stage, and Chris Rock had the sense not to strike back, which is one of the messages that at my school we really work to help our students understand that when you are hit in the school setting, in a setting like that where you have other adults, that is your opportunity now not to take matters into your own hands, and you let an adult know so that they can handle it for you. So we're constantly trying to get that message across of there is a way to take care of business. And clearly what we saw at the Oscars the other night between Will Smith and Chris Rock was not the way. That was one of the most horrible examples of role models I've ever seen. And I was really surprised at Will Smith because I wouldn't think that's the type of message that he would want to send. Chris Rock, as the host, was just doing what Chris Rock does. It is unknown whether or not he knew whether or not Jada Pinkett Smith was suffering from the ailment she was suffering from. He was just doing what he normally does. Now, Will Smith had a couple of options there in terms of how to handle it, and that's what I mean by there's a way to take care of business. If he didn't appreciate the commentary or the joke or thought it was aimed at his wife, he could have just very simply at the end of the show went up to Chris Rock and said, "Yo, Chris, we know each other. Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" And just shared his opinions and his thoughts. It did not take getting up out of the audience, walking up on stage and hitting someone. I hadn't watched the Oscars. I have not watched award programs in 20, 30 years. As a kid, my sister and I used to watch the American Music Awards. I remember they used to come on ABC, and we used to watch some of the other award shows. But over time, and as I became older, I stopped watching all of those type of shows. So I didn't know anything about it until I happened to be sitting at breakfast going through my social media, and usually it's Twitter, and I'm seeing that, the Twitter sphere or Twitter is lit up with folks commenting about Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Oscars. So I still didn't know what was going on. And I text my sister because I thought she watched those type of shows, but as it turns out, she had stopped watching them some years ago as well. So when I texted her, she didn't know what was going on either. And so she now went on Facebook and a couple other social media sites and got the scoop of what had happened. And when I talked to her about it later that evening of actually what had gone, I just could not believe. Because this is the thing. African Americans have been fighting for a place in the Oscars for I don't know how many years. We've been fighting for us to win them because in many times or in many cases, our performances did outperform our Caucasian brothers and sisters, and yet we did not win. So we were always kind of fighting for, to receive our just due in terms of our performances in comparison to some of our Caucasian brothers who was winning the Oscars, and we know good and well our performances were stronger and more powerful. Matter of fact, I've had an issue with the Oscars based on what Denzel Washington and Halle Berry won for. And that's a whole nother story. But in brief, Denzel had played much more powerful roles than the role he played in Training Day. We had Malcolm X. We had the other roles he played when he played the soldier. I'm trying to think of the name of it, and it doesn't come to me at the moment. Halle Berry had played much more powerful roles than what she had played in Monsters Ball. And yet, they won Oscars for those negative roles. Denzel Washington in Training Day was a rogue cop. That's what he wins for. Halle Berry strips down butt naked in Monsters Ball, and that's what she wins for. So I had an issue with the Oscars as it was, but finally they began, after a lot of protests and a lot of noise and a lot of feedback and pushback and as I said, protests and everything else. Finally they started, okay, you know what, they're right. Let's allow them, let's invite them to host the show and win awards just like everybody else. So that was why it was all the more disappointing that Will Smith now, because African Americans now being recognized, as a matter of fact, he won an award from what I understand. I didn't watch it, so I don't know. From what I understand, he won an award for playing the father of Venus and Serena. But in any event, the display of lack of self-control coming from my standpoint as an educator who is always trying to help students with self-control, words cannot describe how horrible that was. Now, my sister and I, we had a chuckle about it in terms of, and it wouldn't have been acceptable there either. However, had it been on a BET with an audience that probably was way much less, probably would have been predominantly African American or what have you, like a BET Awards or NAACP Awards, what have you, that would have been one thing. But you're on the international worldwide stage as what has predominantly been a Caucasian award show. And now, after all the fighting and the protesting, we get there, and now here we go, perpetuating the very stereotype. Because I'm sure, and again, the older I get, the less filter that I have, but I'm sure there was a Caucasian brother or sister somewhere that once Will struck Chris like that, said, "See, I told you." I'm quite sure. Now, maybe if they didn't say it out loud, they may have said it to themselves. "See, we told you this is what's going to happen if we let them in." And again, I don't know. I'm just using my imagination, and I'm just using, historically, and I'm just using most likely it was said somewhere, if not out loud. Certainly it was probably said either in quiet rooms or in folks' heads. So it did not help the cause for now to have an African American master of ceremony, MC, host, or what have you, and an African American actor who ultimately did win an award throughout the night, be up there brawling, cursing, and carrying on. What kind of example was that for our children, let alone our adults? That's what I mean by there is a way to handle business. It just seems like we're just all over the map in terms of just handling business any old kind of way. We got folks lying on each other. We have folks hitting and I mean, because at one point it just seems like no venue is not being infiltrated by evil. It just seems like no, whether it's the family, whether it's, the government, whether it's politics, whether it's the church, it seems like there is no entity that's being infiltrated by just straight up aberrant behavior. I said as a kid, my sister and I, we would watch these award shows whenever, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, no one would have ever thought of that someone would come out of the audience, walk up on stage, and physically assault the MC. I mean, think about that for a minute. Someone now, an actor, well-known, well-paid actor at that, gets up out of his seat, goes up on the stage, and physically strikes the master of ceremony, of whom looks just like he does. Not that it would have been any better or any worse had the master of ceremony been a Caucasian standing there, or if it had been on Caucasian. That would not. But the fact that we've been fighting to be a part of this academy, to be a part of this award ceremony, to not even just be a part of it, but to win more of the awards in there based on our performances. And then once this begins to happen, now we get someone like a Will Smith to go up and strike someone like a Chris Rock. Just absolutely made no sense whatsoever. And then to add insult to injury, to add salt to the wound, Will now goes back in the audience and is dropping F-bombs like nothing. I mean, where is our sense of decency? Where is our sense of pride? Where is our sense of couth? Where is our sense of self-control? Where is our sense of acting like we know how to act? Because there is a way to take care of business. And the sad commentary that I'm making here is I see too many folks who act like, and maybe they're not acting, that they do not know how to take care of business. There is a way to do things. And I can tell you now, hitting on people, lying on people, all kinds of nefarious events and assaults against people, teasing people. I mean, it's just, that's not the way to handle business. I don't know what we're becoming as human beings. I really don't. In all my time on the planet, I have never seen it the way it is now. The type of atrocities that are happening on every level and in every organization. Folks just get up and say anything they want to say. And I'm not talking about like a case like this podcast or a case, where we're trying to make a point. I'm talking about folks are just vicious. I'm talking about folks are just standing up saying anything, just lying on people, just misinforming and giving misinformation. That's what I'm talking about. Just getting up, disparaging folks, getting up, just beating people down, beating other human beings down because they're not the same color they are. They're not the same gender they are. They're not the same sexual orientation they are. Or they're not, just this constant beating each other down, whether it be emotionally, physically, spiritually, or whichever way. It's just this constant beating down. Does anyone ever lift anyone up anymore? And it's a rhetorical question, but it's something to think about. Does anyone lift anyone up anymore? Now, there is no way in the world Will Smith should have been able to get up on that stage or should have even had the desire to go up on that stage. I don't quite understand what was the point to prove. Was it to prove that, Will Smith was the manly man? That, was it to smooth that, I'm defending my wife? He could have defended his wife in another way than that. There's plenty of other ways he could have defended his wife other than that. Even if, after, because he didn't know he was going to win the war, I guess. But even, in his acceptance speech, at that point, he might have been able to say a few words to say, my wife, is struggling or suffers with such and such, and I really didn't appreciate it. Or later, like I said, later, or for that matter, he could have sent the man a text. He could have sent a text message, or something. Or he could have gotten one of the attendants backstage or somebody to say, get a note to him to say, stay away from that area because my wife is suffering from. There are so many other ways that would have still got the point across, that would not have embarrassed an entire race of people. It would not have embarrassed himself, would not have embarrassed Chris Rock. I mean, think about it. If, again, had it been another host, the outcome might have been a little bit different. Had they not been on that national or international stage, the outcome might have been a little bit different. Like I said earlier, at least Chris Rock had the wherewithal, because he even went and tried to play it off. But he wasn't much better with his playoff because he was still using vulgarity. When did this whole notion of being able to just be as vulgar as you want on these public airways? As a kid listening to radio, there was just certain things on radio and television that just could not be said. I mean, you get Chris talking about, well, I guess he slapped the, you fill in the blank, out of me. That word could not be said on radio. That word could not be said on television. We have just lost all sense of decency. And it seems like the further into this thing that we go call life and time seems like the lower and lower we are going. No question we are wiser, but we are certainly weaker. No question we are wiser. Technologically, we have more resources than we've ever had, but from human to human, we are worse than we have ever been. I don't know if the Neanderthals were this bad. I don't know if the cavemen were as bad as this. I really don't. Just constant putting down, beating down. No one lifts anyone up. You got folks suffering from all kinds of depressions and mental illnesses and all kinds of stuff. Within their own heads, their heads are telling them they're no good. And now you got folks on the outside telling you you're no good. Folks coming up and hitting you for no reason whatsoever. It's just something and mind-boggling to watch. But there is a way to take care of business, folks. And I can tell you now, what we saw at the Oscars the other night is not it. You want to learn more about this podcast, please visit my website. It is marcamedley.com, marcamedley.com. That is the portal and the hub to all of my sites, whether it's my music, whether it's the radio show, because I'm on live each Saturday morning from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time on gobrave.org. We web stream around the world. That's GOBRAVE.org. And in the northern New Jersey area, I'm on FM radio, 88.7 FM. And not to mention all the various like TuneIn Radio app, Radio FX. There are other radio apps. I'm sure if you put in Brave New Radio, either WPSC in the search bar, it'll come up. But I'm on the air live every Saturday morning. I have the opportunity to play the Good News in Song, which is the gospel music, as well as I interview authors from around the world. But again, check out the website. That is the portal to everything. marcamedley.com, marcamedley.com. And again, the title of this one is going to be, There is a Way to Take Care of Business, and certainly what we saw the other night was not it.